There is one fear that researchers believe every single human on Earth shares. Not spiders, not heights, not death. Something older than all of those. Something so fundamental that it shows up in every culture, every continent, every era of human history without a single exception. Psychologists have a name for it, and the moment you hear what it is, you will immediately recognize it in yourself. But to understand it, we have to go back. Not to ancient Egypt, not to medieval Europe. Back to the very beginning. Back to when fear wasn't a feeling you managed. It was the thing keeping you alive. Your earliest ancestors lived in one of the most dangerous environments any animal has ever survived. The African savanna 300,000 years ago was not a backdrop for nature documentaries. It was a kill zone. Leopards that could take a human in complete silence. Hyenas that hunted in packs of 30 crocodiles in every river. African wild dogs that could run for hours without slowing. Your ancestors were not the apex predator. They were mid-table. Something faster and stronger was almost always nearby. And unlike every other prey animal on that savanna, your ancestors had one catastrophic disadvantage. They were almost completely blind in the dark. This is where the first fear lives. Leopards are crepuscular. They hunt at dawn and dusk and through the night. Their eyes gather light 6 times more efficiently than human eyes. In the dark, a leopard can see you perfectly. You cannot see it at all. For hundreds of thousands of years, nightfall was not the end of the day. It was the beginning of the most dangerous hours. And your nervous system encoded that information so deeply that it is still running inside you right now. The chill you feel in a dark room, the way your eyes move to shadows, the specific discomfort of not being able to see what is behind you. That is not anxiety. That is a 300,000-year-old predator detection system doing exactly what it was built to do. But darkness was only the beginning, because researchers studying fear across hunter-gatherer societies have found something that changes the picture entirely. When anthropologists ask modern hunter-gatherer groups what they are most afraid of, the answers are almost never predators. The Hadza of Tanzania, the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the Semane of Bolivia, groups still living something close to the original human lifestyle. They all give versions of the same answer. What they fear most is not an animal. It is a person. Specifically, it is a person from outside the group, a stranger. This makes biological sense in a way that goes deeper than it first appears. In a world without hospitals, without antibiotics, without any of the systems that protect you from disease, a stranger was a vector. They carried illnesses your immune system had never encountered. They carried unknown intentions. They came from a different group with different alliances, different rules, different claims on territory and food. Every stranger your ancestor encountered represented a genuine, immediate, potentially lethal unknown, and your brain treated it accordingly. The technical term is xenophobia. But stripped of its modern political weight, what it actually describes is a fear response that kept your ancestors alive for hundreds of thousands of years. The discomfort you feel around unfamiliar people in unfamiliar places, the way your body tightens slightly in a crowd of strangers, the specific unease of being the only outsider in a room. That program is not a flaw. It is ancient software running on modern hardware. But here is where it gets complicated, because the fear of strangers, as powerful as it was not the fear that shaped human society most deeply. That distinction belongs to something else entirely. Something that researchers now believe sits beneath almost every other social fear humans experience. The fear of being cast out. In a hunter-gatherer camp, exile was not a metaphor. It was not a dramatic gesture. It was a death sentence. Slow and almost certain. A single human alone on the African savanna, without the group's knowledge, without the group's protection, without the group's food-sharing network, did not last long. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm, who spent decades studying hunter-gatherer social structures, found that the threat of ostracism was the single most powerful behavioral regulator in every group he studied. More powerful than physical punishment, more powerful than hunger, more powerful than the fear of predators. Because predators you could sometimes escape, exile you could not. This is why your body responds to social rejection the way it does. In 2003, neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA ran an experiment using brain imaging. She had participants play a simple computer game where they passed a ball back and forth with 2 other players. At a certain point, the other players stopped passing the ball to the participant, just excluded them from the game silently. Without explanation, the brain scans showed something nobody expected. The same regions of the brain that activate during physical pain lit up during social exclusion. The anterior cingulate cortex, the anterior insula, the same circuitry, the same signals. Your brain does not distinguish between a broken bone and being left out of the group. It processes both as damage, because for 300,000 years, they were both equally dangerous. This is the fear that runs deepest. Not darkness, not strangers, not even death. The fear of being removed from the people who keep you alive. And it gets stranger because this fear did not just protect individuals, it built civilizations. Boehm's research showed that the threat of social exclusion was so powerful that it functioned as the primary enforcement mechanism for cooperation in early human groups. You shared your food not just because you were generous, but because you knew what happened to people who didn't. You followed the group's rules not just because you agreed with them, but because the alternative was unthinkable. Every system of law, every code of conduct, every social norm that has ever existed is at its foundation a formalized version of the same threat your ancestors communicated around a fire 300,000 years ago. Now here is what nobody talks about. Modern life has dismantled almost every original source of fear and replaced it with almost none of the original sources of safety. You are statistically safer from predators than any human who has ever lived. Your chances of dying from a stranger's illness, while not zero, are lower than at almost any point in history. Physical exile is no longer a death sentence. You can survive alone. You can order food to a door and never see another person for weeks. And yet the fears remain perfectly intact, perfectly calibrated for a world that no longer exists. The anxiety you feel about what people think of you, the dread of being excluded from a group, any group, even one that barely matters, the specific panic of social humiliation. None of these are proportionate to any real threat you currently face, but they were proportionate once. They were the exact right response to the exact right danger for hundreds of thousands of years. Your nervous system has not received the update. It is still scanning for leopards in the dark, still watching strangers for signs of hostile intent, still treating every moment of social rejection like the beginning of exile. In 2013, psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University published research showing that self-esteem functions as a sociometer, not a measure of how good you feel about yourself in isolation, a real-time gauge of how accepted you are by the people around you. When your self-esteem drops, it is your body telling you the same thing it told your ancestor huddled by a fire 300,000 years ago. You are drifting from the group. Correct it. Now, the anxiety is not the problem. The anxiety is the alarm. It was built for a world where ignoring it meant dying alone in the dark. We are the descendants of every human who was afraid enough to stay close, afraid enough to cooperate, afraid enough to follow the rules of the group even when those rules were costly. The ones who were not afraid enough are not our ancestors. They didn't make it. Every fear you carry is inherited from someone who survived because of it. And every morning when you wake up and feel that low, unreasonable dread about something that cannot actually kill you, you are feeling the echo of 300,000 years of people who stayed alive by feeling exactly the same thing. The dark is safer now. The strangers are mostly fine, and you are almost certainly not going to be exiled today. But some part of you is not convinced. Some part of you is still crouched by that fire, watching the edge of the light, listening for something moving in the dark. That part of you is very old, and it kept everyone who came before you alive long enough to have you. The least you can do is let it do its job.